Hi, I'm Umair and I am your guide for a successful startup. If you are a startup owner, then you may have faced this difficult question that this is my idea and which technology is right for me. Right now, there are many famous technologies, for example, PHP, for example, there is Python framework, for example, there is Ruby on Rails, there is Node.js and React. Yeah. So you may face this difficult question that which technology should I go with? Uh, let's first understand that these technologies came out for a different reason and they were focused on one thing at that time, but over the time they have evolved and now they offer a lot of similar functionalities. For example, in the early days, JavaScript came out to do document manipulation, and but over the time it has evolved. Now there are JavaScript frameworks. For example, Node.js is one of the famous framework. And similarly, initially the PHP was very famous for web development, and but it has its own problems like it has code vulnerabilities, it has code management issues. The scripts were not very good, but it has evolved over the time, and now it's a good framework. Ruby on Rails came out around 2014, and it was very famous and for due to its architecture, its framework MVC, model view controller approach, and that was very good for the developers because it provided the separation of concern. The code was very well divided, the framework was very good, and it was really famous. But there were its limitations, like it was not offering at that time the dual binding, two-way binding, and then Node came out and it was providing the two-way binding, that the binding like the server can manipulate the front end without user interaction, and similarly the front end can update the server content. So then there was also a concept that a app should be very less loaded on a server. It should less relied on server and more focused on the client side content, more focused on loaded on client side. And there were also opposite concept that most of the content should be over the server and it should be fetched from the server and then should to the, and so over the time these things have evolved. For example, in these days Ruby on Rails even offered that two-way binding, which was one of the main reason was Node.js famous for. So over the time these technologies has evolved, and so it may be a difficult question for some people, but it's not like a very difficult question, because if your product have a side for or it is focusing on one kind of thing, then this is a choice that one technology is famous for. For example, if you in these days if you are going to build something related to artificial intelligence, then maybe the Python is good for that part where you are building a model, an artificial model. And Python is very good for it, and because it has a lot of relevant libraries, and it is very easy to build something in Python related to artificial intelligence. But when it's come to the actual web app project, because it has a front end, it has a back end, the server side, and there is a traffic going on, and there is management, there is session management, there are all different kind of stuffs going on, then maybe the Ruby on Rails is the best choice. And Ruby on Rails is famous among Americans and other communities in the world, and its community is really active, and it's a very kind of developer choice, because it's really help the developer to build the product in less time and cost effective way. That's why the Ruby on Rails is famous. So over the time these technologies have evolved, and they have kind of similar functionalities, but also have their own core features. For example, in Python, the machine learning, the Ruby on Rails core feature is robust development, quick development, and cost effective development for startups it is especially for startups. And similarly, PHP is famous for simple websites, but it also offer the complex websites. But it's not like that. It's not do not offer, but its main point for which is famous is that. And similarly, WordPress is for the portfolio website, for simple websites to show simple information and not a lot of changes. So these technologies have their own power. Now there are some technologies which are only focused on front end, for example React, and then you have to use with some other backend technology like Ruby on Rails or Python. So a good technology is one which is compatible with most of the technologies, and most of the time it is not an issue, and because server side it mostly are separate, and sometimes we just build the APIs to communicate, for example in the case of apps. So it's totally now up to your product choice, that what kind of technology product you are building. If you are building a tech product, then it's really the question you should very much focus on. But if you are not building a tech product and it involves user data gathering and saving and some manipulation or community building or some kind of these, then maybe a Ruby on Rails is best because it's cost effective. You are a startup, you do not have a very big budget, and you want to get your product out in the market as soon as possible. Obviously Ruby on Rails is the best choice. You may say that why not Python, or why not PHP? The reason is the PHP has a bad history of security vulnerabilities, and if something is very famous, then it is also a hacker choice. So PHP is very common, and I often saw that even its code is not very elegant. So that's why my choice is Ruby on Rails. Why not Python? The Python is really good. But it is more focused on machine learning and other scientist related part. So if you notice that there are great products in the world like YouTube, and they are not just built on one technology. They are using many technologies. For example, they are also using PHP. They are also using some part there could be a Ruby on Rails, some part there could be a Python, and some part there could be React. So they are using many technologies, and they are focusing it on the part where its power lies. For example, Python the power lies in the machine learning part. They are using it only for machine learning part. Ruby on Rails power is to handle the app structure and other, and the app itself. Okay, they are going it. I'm just explaining it to you as example. I'm not actually pointing out the data. So the concept is, if you have a very good product and it's already established, it has a good customer database, then you should use this approach, that do the part which is and use the technology which is more relevant to that part. But if you are someone who is just starting out, then you need something which is good in all fields. Then in that case Ruby on Rails is the good choice. Now there is also one problem you may face, that is the developer available, or the developer available for that part. So sometimes developers are available, for example, and there are also cheap. For example, in the case of PHP, there are a lot of developers available. In the case of Ruby on Rails, there are not very abundant developers. There are good amount of developers, but they are not very abundant, and because and it's choice for people who have good expertise and have good understanding, and not only focusing on startups. So it is good for the companies, it is a choice for the companies which are working on startups. And similarly Python is mostly for the companies who are working on artificial intelligence. And as in these days we notice that there is a boom for artificial intelligence, but over the time my experience tells me that there was also a time when Android was very famous. There was also a time when apps was mobile apps were very famous, and now they are not very much famous. They are as good as web apps. So similarly it will happen with AI. There will be new products, artificial intelligence based products, and these parts will focus on machine learning and artificial intelligence, but they still need to get communicate, still need to be hosted on websites, they still need to be available for customers, and they still need to be run on the server. So there will be the other parts with the configuration, the deployment, the front end, the user interaction, all these parts will still the same. And I guess the technology should be able to handle all such problems, and it also should be able to communicate with other technologies. So at this time, if you are building a tech product and if your product is totally artificial intelligence, then if you ask me, then maybe I will suggest that build the app on Ruby on Rails, because it's cost effective. It's you can get the app out soon on the in the world in short time with cost effective way, and then use the AI part, use Python for that part, and then your app Ruby on Rails part will communicate with that part, and they will exchange the data where it's needed. So that's the way it's work. In this way you get a good security, you get a good core, you get artificial intelligence, and that's future proof. So the question is always ask which technology is right for me, and then discuss it with your developer, with your team, so you may know that you are going to choose the right one. And I do hope so I have answered your question. Thank you.